Hey everybody, Justin here. Due to the requests on the first video, I am back with 11 more new player questions answered. If you haven't, subscribe to our channel and consider liking this video and leaving a comment. It all helps us out very much. Enough of the preamble, let's get to this list. Do enemies move and attack in the same turn? If an enemy has the hunter keyword, they will move and attack in the same turn. Obviously, they'll only attack if they engage an investigator after moving with their hunter keyword, but yes, enemies can move and attack in the same turn. There are some exceptions to this rule, but those are usually written on the card, so it'll be easy to know when that exception does happen. Remember, when an enemy moves via its hunter keyword, prey may come into effect. I discussed the prey keyword in the previous video of this series, which you can find in the description. What is the difference between disengaged and exhausted? While it doesn't come up too often, these are two words that you need to be aware of the difference of when it comes to enemies. An exhausted enemy is rotated 90 degrees and won't engage until it is ready. However, an enemy that is simply disengaged, or ready, will engage again at the moment it can. Before I explain further, let's look at what evading does for some more information. When you evade an enemy, the enemy is exhausted and then engagement is broken. Basically, evading causes the enemy to become both disengaged and exhausted. Sometimes an enemy can become disengaged and not exhausted. A notable card that does this is Stealth, which disengages the enemy you evade, but doesn't exhaust it. This means that if there is another investigator at your location, or you are still at that location at the end of your turn, that enemy will engage. Does engaging an enemy provoke attacks of opportunities? Yes! Let me explain. An engage action is an attack of opportunity. An engage action provokes an attack of opportunity if you are engaged with any enemies while taking an engage action. As an example, as you can see here, if you are engaged with a swarm of rats and try to engage a swarm of rats another investigator is engaged with, the swarm of rats you are currently engaged with will have an attack of opportunity provoked. However, in a similar situation, if you are not engaged with any enemies and you engage a swarm of rats another investigator is engaged with, there are no enemies to provoke an attack of opportunity from. Essentially, when you take an engage action, you provoke an attack of opportunity from all enemies you are currently engaged with. The enemy you are engaging, however, will not provoke an attack of opportunity because you are not engaged with that enemy when you take the engage action. What happens when you move while engaged with an enemy? In most cases, the enemy is going to come along for the ride. If you take a move action, you provoke an attack of opportunity from all engaged enemies, and then you move. Some cards, like Shortcut, can allow a player to move while engaged and not provoke any attacks of opportunities. So just remember, when you move, if enemies are engaged with you, they're going to come with you. They just latch on to you because you're so cool. There are cases, as I said, when you don't move, enemies don't move when you move, and that is with massive enemies. They're so big, they won't budge when you move out of their location, but they'll still provoke attacks of opportunities when you do. Can you attack an enemy that is engaged with another player? You can. We have experience with this. Unless there is another game effect limiting you, you can attack enemies engaged with other players. This is often crucial because it saves actions and potentially attacks of opportunities if you yourself are engaged. However, with great action efficiency comes great risk. You'll often see us asking if the other player trusts us before making an attack on an enemy they are engaged with. This is because if you miss your attack against an enemy engaged with another player, you hit that player instead. And if the enemy has retaliate, it hits you too. Now, a moment of silence for my men that Mark Harrigan shot to death. What happens when an investigator engaged with an enemy is defeated? Oh, this is perfect. I can follow up my min story. If an investigator is defeated while engaged with an enemy, that enemy will engage with any other investigators at its location following normal engagement rules. If it has prey, it'll follow its prey rules for engagement. Otherwise, the investigators can choose. This is, of course, not the case with aloof enemies, so let's talk about them. How the heck does aloof work? An enemy with aloof does not automatically engage investigators at its location. That's the basic rules of the keyword, but there are a few other rules you need to know about it. When an aloof enemy spawns, it spawns unengaged. An investigator may engage an enemy with aloof as normal, and an investigator cannot attack an aloof enemy while that enemy is not engaged with an investigator. In addition, something to be careful of, if you evade an aloof enemy and it becomes exhausted, you will need to engage it again in order to attack it. I don't know how you evading the enemy causes you to lose track of it, but this video isn't the time or place for me to rant about the aloof keyword, so let's move on. What is the difference between playing and committing a card? When you play a card, you pay its cost and the card is played. If it's an asset, it enters your play area, and if it is an event, its effect resolves. Committing a card is done during a skill test. When you commit a card, it increases your skill value by 1 for each matching skill icon of the test being taken. Let's look at Spectral Razor as an example. Wow. When Spectral Razor is played, its effect is resolved and its skill icons are ignored. So as you can see, if this is played as an event, we're ignoring the skill icons and we're just doing the text on the card. When Spectral Razor is committed, it increases a brain or a fist test by 1, but its text box is ignored. This is, as you can see here on this example, we're committing this card, so we're ignoring the text box. This carries over to our next question. When you play an event, do you use the skill icons on the card? You do not. Again, looking at Spectral Razor, when you play the card, ignore the skill icons on the card. They do not contribute to the test you are making when you resolve the fight action on this event. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. What is a good team composition for 2, 3, or 4 players? There are a lot of answers to this question. So much so that we made an entire video talking about it, which you can find in the description of this video. Team composition is an important aspect of this game, and a better team composition will lead to more victories. But we'll still power through some options for you to consider. In 2 players, you can play with either a clover and a fighter or 2 flex investigators. A clover is an investigator that gets clues, while a fighter does exactly that. They fight. They fight and they fight. A flex investigator is an investigator that can both get clues and fight. In 3 players, you will likely play most commonly with a clover and a fighter and a flex or a support, but compositions with a clover or a fighter and 2 flexes and support is also possible. Even 3 flexes and supports is a thing. As I said, team compositions are incredibly varied, and it's kind of just like up to your team's preference as you build. 4 players, it goes even deeper. In 4 players, you can do pretty much any sort of combination under the sun. A designated clover and a fighter is recommended when starting out, but because there are so many different ways that players can flex at 4 players, composition can be what you make of it. Last question. What is the best way to play solo? What is the best way to play solo? It all comes down to personal preference. True solo is playing with only 1 investigator. This mode requires specific deck building to best handle all the threats thrown at you, and also requires a different pattern of thinking in regards to how you play. Playing 2-handed means you play the game solo, but you're playing 2 investigators. This is my personal preference when playing solo because it is more fun for me than playing in the pace that true solo demands. You could even also play 3 or 4-handed, but for me that would be way too overwhelming. But if it seems like something that would interest you, definitely try it out. And that's it. 11 more new player questions answered. Do you have any other questions you want me to answer in this format? Or any other videos you want to see in this format? If you do, let me know in the comments. Again, consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. It really helps us out. In the meantime, go play some more Arkham and have a great time doing it. I hope this video has helped you out. A huge thanks to our patrons for supporting the channel. It means the world to me. If you want to support the channel beyond just watching the video, you can check out the Patreon link in the description below. There also is a thanks feature you can find in the description bar. where you can donate money to the channel if you want to support beyond just watching. But just watching is, as always, totally great as well and totally appreciated. Have a good one, and as always, GG's.